think of critical mass, we think of like nuclear bombs. And that's that the chain reaction has started, that it's not going to stop. It's just going to continue and you can't stop it. And that's actually correct. And the idea is that when you have networks, if you have enough active nodes and all, then it's like, how much energy do I need to keep this mass going? Evidently, we don't have critical mass on the discussion boards. Yeah, I know that was mean, but hey, remember, the best humor has a shred of truth to it. But there comes a point in a network where when you put more energy into it, you get a lot less return. And that's because the network can just run on its own. And that's what we mean by critical mass. And so, in the rule of 150, the average of people who are actually active are about 130. But what it comes down to is that critical mass normally happens 10 to 15% of the people going by. And here's a graph of it, that you reach a critical point and then all of a sudden things just take off. And then you reach 100% efficiency. And so, please don't get this wrong. I've had students in the past who've got this wrong and it just drives me crazy. Every market that you have, every segment, you can think of as a bucket. And that bucket has only so many people that you can sell to. And so when you reach critical mass, it means I've taken advantage of a certain size of this bucket. Now keep something in mind. When you pick a bucket, is it truly a network or not? Because if it's not a network, you can't reach critical mass. That's the first thing to look at. But each time you fill up a bucket, then you have to go get another bucket. You have to go get another bucket. And so, like, suppose they say, my bucket is going to be the United States of America. Well, that means I've got to get like 45 million people active. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It's just like too humongous. And this also ties into your target market, your addressable markets. And so they like to say, like, when you have revenue over time, that, you know, you get this nice big curve and it grows and stuff like that. And the reality is your curves tend to look more like this. And the reason why, and the general shape is right. But what happens is that, what are you doing? You're filling buckets. You're selling to certain markets. And before you can transition from one bucket to another bucket, there might be a little delay, and so you get ripples. In terms of filling the bucket, it's about time, frequency, latency. How long do I wait before I see an effect? And that's the thing. A lot of promotions might go out one day and everybody's wondering, oh, when am I going to see something? Well, if you release it on a Friday, it's like, how many people are going to be active over the weekend? Is my structure efficient, and how much is it going to cost me? Technically, later on down the road, the cost per person should be a lot less than when I first have it. How do I maintain a network? How do I keep it running? I need good contact. How frequently do I need to keep in touch? Is monthly good enough? Is weekly good enough? And that's because you don't want to do it too much or you're going to annoy people. And where's my critical mass level? Where can I get something that's self-sustaining? And so these are the types of things that repeat users value. Things like information. Can you help me financially? But the big issue still comes down to trust, privacy, intimacy, and civility. If you don't have that, you don't have a network. The perceived value of your network has to do with positioning, the associations you make it, and the need for it. How urgent is it? And does the network actually work? I mean, there's nothing more frustrating when you enter a network and then nothing works. But my perceived value of a relationship is based on this equation. And so as you could see, the variables involved, things like distance and frequency and all. Now you would think number of users would be in the numerator, and it's in the denominator. And number of users has to do with not the absolute number of users, but basically how many users do I perceive there to be in. And that's because if there's a boatload of users, then I'm not going to like that network because I'm just going to be one of a million. So this has more to do with a measure of personalization than number of users. But naturally, the shorter links I have, the more value I perceive. If the links are longer and it's harder to converse, then the value gets lower. And so here are some different techniques to get critical mass, and it's about information, emotion, time, and economics. And so these are the factors that you look at in order to spur on critical mass.